Okay, we should be live.
All right, sounds good.
I'm just double checking. Okay, yeah, we're live. Welcome back to another Rookie Rescue. We're back with Astra Machina talking about their amazing robot and success they've had this season. I think right now you guys have a top 10 auto OPR in the world.
Yep.
Yeah, and I guess just to start off, do you want to explain? Do you want to just go through your whole robot, how it works once more?
Oh yeah, sure. So starting off for drivetrain, we have four 312 RPM motors, powered at a ratio which results in a 390 RPM output, I believe, to give us a little bit more torque because the season requires a little bit of pushing and defense.
Mm-hmm.
Alongside that, one change we made from this beating to the next is that we switched to some lower durometer wheels to increase our torque and acceleration throughout the match.
Yeah.
And then uh, moving on to our intake, we changed our rollers from these Swift Star wheels to these 96 millimeter Go Build Rhino wheels to increase the compression on our intake wheels to hold the ball in more consistently during autonomous and during teleop. And then lastly, one major change we made to our shooter from the last meeting was that we incorporated a counter roller to help decrease the amount of bounce outs due to the backspin of the ball that usually gets transferred with a flywheel shooter.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any problems with that or any major iterations within the counter roller itself?
Oh yeah, so earlier on when we are iterating our counter roller, we came across a few issues like regarding compression and making sure like we had enough torque to overcome like the amount of I guess torque that the counter roller uses up because compared to like a normal just flywheel. So we just made sure we have two motors. We tried to decrease the amount of friction on our flywheel and overall just decrease the compression because at first the compression was too much, but
Mm-hmm.
we decreased it to make it more consistent.
Yeah, I know the counter roller is a little bit of a tough thing to get for some teams. Um, do you have any like advice for how teams can implement that like very well?
Yeah, I guess one piece of advice I have was is that make sure your durometers match for both your shooter wheel and your counter roller because the durometers are different. That might result in having it making it have too much topspin or backspin. So I recommend sticking with whatever durometer you're using for your shooter wheel to incorporate for your counter
Mm-hmm.
roller.
Yeah. Does that make that much of a difference?
Yeah, like when we switched from 50 durometer counter rollers, we saw quite a bit of backspin from our shooter. But once we switched to the 30 durometer, which matched for our shooter's wheels, it resulted in like zero to no backspin whatsoever.
That's a good thing. Do, how many balls did you get in your auto again? Um,
Currently we have a 12 artifact auto, which we shoot three, empty the gate, and shoot the other remaining nine preloads. But we're
mhm.
working on making a 15 and potentially more down the road as we begin to rebuild this break.
Yeah. Did you have a indexer of anything?
Currently on this iteration, we do not have any indexer,
Mm-hmm.
nor do we plan to add any indexer because we realized that throughout our calculations, the throughput of just scoring more balls ends up scoring more than having an indexer throughout the match
Yeah.
because you can only get a few extra pattern points with your indexer versus having a very fast throughput instead.
Yep. That makes sense. I think just making sure that if you have an indexer, making sure it's as fast as possible, just to get
Yeah.
like as much points. And then you talked about your Mechanim wheels having a lower durometer. Did you notice any major changes with that, like affecting your performance, or is that like a smaller thing that you had?
The effects of its performance aren't as major, but it resulted in us having a little bit faster acceleration, deceleration, and like pushing power.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, helped us like improve our drivetrains a little bit more than we could, like getting every step like a little bit better and better as the season goes on.
Yeah. And speaking of defense, how did you encounter a lot of defense at your meets?
Yeah, in our region, there's been a lot of defense recently. In some ways, we came to combat that defense, and this might be especially good for rookies. Is that use the wall to make sure, like as you're getting shoved, if you're using the wall, it has a lot of friction. So
Yeah.
if you're pushed against the wall, it won't allow you to get pushed near as easily compared to like other parts of the field, like an open part one
Mm-hmm.
major part of the field that gets shoved around a lot is like the top of the triangle. If you have to shoot from there, the best thing you could do is wait to see if the field clears in the area and then head over to ensure that you can have an uncontested shot.
Yep. And did you shoot from far zone or just closest zone?
Oh yeah, depending on the match and our partner, we either shoot close or far. We prefer to tend to shoot close because we could guarantee to make all those shots. But for far, we on average make around 7 or 8 of our shots compared if we shoot 9 in total.
Mm-hmm.
Tend to like miss 1 or 2 of it as well due to like bouncing out still.
Yeah. And did you what's it called? Did you have any like hardships trying to get that far shot being as good as possible?
Yeah, we spent like a few days tuning to make sure we hit the correct part of the goal to ensure that like it made as many in as possible. And having
Yeah.
the counter roller also helped that as well.
Yeah. And for any rookie teams, do you have any advice on how they can get their four shot being as consistent as possible?
Oh yeah, I guess one thing rookies could do is just make sure your PID is good because something I see from a lot of teams, at least in my region, is that without a proper PID, they may overshoot or undershoot. And people may think it's a mechanical issue, but it's more so their RPM varying because either the one they don't use a PID or two their PID isn't tuned correctly.
Yeah. I think PID in general, if it's not tuned correctly, will always be bad in general. And speaking of your PID, what kinds of PID are you implementing in your robot? Is it just for your RPM PID, or is there any other PID you have?
Oh yeah, we use PIDs actually for a few things in a robot. One thing we use them for is our drivetrain during autonomous, having different PIDs for translational, horizontal, like well, translational heading and like forward and backwards movement is very good in autonomous, as well as our turret having a PID as well to make sure we reach the target as fast as possible and don't overshoot too much. And we
Mm-hmm.
also, of course, use a PID F loop. We added the F component for our flywheel because we noticed that by having an F component, it made the shots way more consistent. It didn't make the PID vary as much by having a constant power applied to it.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you were planning on rebuilding during the break. So were you planning on doing rebuilding your subsystems or like your entire robot?
Oh yeah, we plan on rebuilding our entire robot because over the past month or so of this new robot or two, we noticed that there's a few things we can improve upon, and we're hoping that rebuild will help us achieve all those goals, such as like increasing our drivetrain speed to get faster autos and teleop, as well as making sure that we have a base mechanism so our partners and us could get the full base points per match and make sure we get the ranking point for base later on at state and at worlds and a few other things.
So if there's any rookie teams who are considering doing a rebuild, what things do you think they should consider before starting their rebuild?
I think one thing rookies should do before considering rebuild is making sure that you maximize your first robot as much as you can because constantly making iterations to your robot, although it may seem good in theory, you have to make sure you got the base stuff down before moving on to further robots, like trying to rebuild a whole robot.
Yeah, like don't try to overachieve or anything like that. I know one of my sister teams is trying to rebuild after building a not so good first bot. Um, they're trying to do a full rebuild. I'm like, get the first robot, make it solid, and then we'll go from there. Um, and then talking about some more of your autonomous, what kind of pathing did you use?
Oh yeah, for our autonomous, we use pager pathing to make our 12 artifact autonomous, but we are looking to find other solutions as well, just like point to point or other ones to increase our speed during autonomous because most of our paths actually don't require too much curves and mostly fall like a straight line. So we're
Yeah.
hoping to maximize the speed we have during autonomous.
And how rookie friendly did you find Pedro?
Oh yeah, rookie's a very like, good like autonomous pathing to use. It's very good for rookies. Like there's a lot of documentation going over it, and I think it'd be good for most rookies to use. That Roadrunner and some other I think open source pathing softwares also work well. But yeah, I would recommend Pedro to any other rookie, honestly.
Did you do any experimenting between Pedro and Roadrunner before settling on Pedro, or?
Yeah, the first time I ever used Pedro was way back in center stage during NTI, I believe, back with Indubitables. But since then, I usually just stick to like the base page, even though more features have gotten added since then. I usually stick to like the base, best your lines, best your curves, nothing crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And the only real difference between Roadrunner and that, what I use it for, is the path correction, which is very useful for us because in multiple times during our meet, some of our opponents or teammates have gotten in the way. And having that path correction to correct for them being in the way really helped us out, making sure our autos are more consistent.
Yeah, and I think just making sure your auto is good no matter what library you use, Page or Roadrunner or anything else. I think as long as you have it consistent, like you'll have a good auto. And whatever you do, you'll do it good. Um, let's talk about some of your teleop enhancements. Did you have any like specific things you wanted to talk about, or?
Yeah, I guess our main teleop like feature we use is the auto tracking of our turret. Like throughout the match, we like try to mitigate like the amount of air we could have while like going throughout the match. So we have the turret automatically aim at the goal using our odometry and post tracking.
Mm-hmm.
And alongside that, we have one button to shoot our balls, which is a state that has multiple sensors to ensure that the ball is in our chamber and is ready to launch. All we have to do is hold that button down to shoot all three balls, and that's about it.
Yeah, for your turret tracking, did you use a limelight or?
We use odometry and we use some trigonometry in order to calculate what angle we need the turret to face based off the robot's X and Y, same as the goal's X and Y and the robot's heading.
Did you not experience any drift with the odometry, or did you account for that?
Yeah, we do experience some drift with the odometry, but however, that like happens within like 5 minutes of match play. For
Mm-hmm.
the 2 minutes the match usually is, the drift doesn't accumulate enough to really affect our turret tracking as
Yeah,
much.
yeah, that's a good thing. I think. Do you have any advice for any team struggling with drift? Because I know
Uh,
some teams have a lot of drift with their odometry and their IMUs.
Yeah, I guess the first thing I would say is either one, of course, like try to retune it and get it as like small as possible. But if not, having a rehoming button is also very useful. Like if you need to rehome once a match, like make sure it's like within your human player zone or some protected zone to make sure nobody could like shove you out the way while you're trying to rehome. But if you have to rehome once or twice a match, it's not horrific. It might cut down a few seconds in your cycle time, but if it could ensure more shots going in, I'd also say it's worth it.
And did you have any end game park or anything? Uh, any?
On our current bot, we do not have any end game capabilities. We're hoping for a rebuild to have a set of slides that go down to fit anybody within around 17 and a half by 17 and a half inches. We're hoping for that to be very useful as many robots in our region probably won't have any of those commonly found kicker devices or anything. So ensuring that we could get the base park for most robots in our region will be very useful for ensuring that we get high qualification rankings and all that.
Yeah. You talked about. I know you talked about your hang. You wanted to implement that in your future robot and your indexing. Was there anything else that you're gonna change in your next robot?
Like stuff like increasing the drivetrain RPM, like I said earlier, and like making sure our turret has more fail safes to make sure our position doesn't lose like track over time. And we're also trying to make sure we get a faster throughput because currently we use a kicker, so it takes us a while to shoot all three artifacts. But we're hoping to have like a very fast like gate-based mechanism so that could shoot all three within half a second or less to really maximize our cycle times.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any sensors you wanted to add to make your throughput even faster, or do you already have those sensors and you just want to continue adding to them?
Oh yeah, I mean the sensors we use right now we think are going to be helpful enough to ensure that we could shoot all three very successfully. Like we use like two color sensors because originally we had one color sensor, but sometimes it shot through the hole of the ball, which made us misread and think just no artifact was in our chamber. But since then, we've added a second color sensor to ensure that it's always looking through at least one hole of the ball, and that helped us to make our auto more consistent, same as our teleop. So we're hoping just to use those two color sensors to keep track of how many balls get shot out and ensure that all three balls get shot out before we move on to our next action.
So do you only use your color sensor to detect the balls that get shot out, or do you also use them to get the balls coming in and make sure you don't have four or anything like that?
Yeah. Currently, our intake isn't capable of holding anything more than 3 artifacts, so that's why we don't easily keep track of how many balls are inside our intake. We only use the color sensors to ensure how many balls got shot out. To because we usually intake around 3, and it won't really move on to the next action unless either one it detects a high spike in intake current, or two we make it like in code basically.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Just having a mechanical hard stop there, sort of, so you can't intake more than three. Do you have any other like mechanical hard stops like that where you have fail safes so you don't get any penalties or anything like that?
Yeah, one other mechanical hard stop we have in our robot is for our turret. We have two beams that stick up from the back of our robot, just in case our turret, like for some reason, goes past its max position. We have to hit those mechanical hard stops to ensure that we don't go outside the 18 by 18 robot inch limit, to ensure we don't get any other penalties during the match.
Mm-hmm. And do you have anything like to help you with defense, playing defense on other alliances, or do you just go for your straight shot every time?
Yeah, aside from the drivetrain capabilities that we added from the last meeting, the only other thing we really use is make basically like training ourselves to have like avoid like robots or opponents as much as often like throughout the match by taking different paths. Like if we see two robots both in center of the field, we'll choose to shoot far or vice versa. And we also implemented some defensive wedges on our side of a robot to
Uh
ensure
huh.
that if someone were to shove us, we'd make sure we don't get shoved up, or hopefully shove them up as well.
Mm-hmm. So you try to avoid defense and just go for your shots.
Yeah, we usually don't tend to play defense. We more so want to try to avoid defense.
So do you have any like advice for any rookies trying to deal with defense or trying to play defense?
Yeah, I mean, depending on your robot archetype, make sure your robot's solidly built enough if you're going to try to play defense during a match. And if you're going to be experiencing defense, like what I said earlier, using the walls is some way to like plant yourself down. And what's it called? Making sure you avoid other robots could ensure you make more balls in, of course, and don't deal with so much defense.
So just a strong drivetrain and a lot of drive practice, I guess.
Yeah, a
Just
lot
to.
of driver practice, strategy, and like making sure you choose where to shoot strategically.
Mm-hmm. And how much drive practice did you guys usually do?
Yeah, on average, earlier in the season, we averaged way more, like around hopefully an hour each day. But
Mm-hmm.
now that the season's progressed and like we've kind of gotten used to the robot, we
Right.
usually shift down more to like 15 to 30 minutes a day or
Yeah.
day or two.
Yeah, that's more than enough. Um, and then for any rookies like still struggling in their season, it's halfway through the season. They have their leagues coming up. Do you have any advice on how they could kind of speed up their season and speed up their robot process and their programming process?
Yeah, I think one thing a lot of rookies could do is that, especially for a lot of regions, which is like the US, which is experiencing break right now,
Mm-hmm.
try to take note of your season so far and see what things you could iterate further and improve upon your robot heading into the new year, to ensure that at your next like in a next league tournament or any other tournament for first, to ensure that your robot is as best as it could be or improve upon the stuff you're struggling with before at prior meets.
Yeah, I think just it all comes down to a lot of practice and making sure everything's as consistent as possible. And then you mentioned earlier that um your turret. I know you have your turret. I wanted to know how effective that has been for you in reducing your cycle times.
Oh yeah, I guess our turret from the beginning of the season, it helped us like first off, like we don't have to align nearly as much as like a lot of other teams who don't have a turret, so we could like very quickly cycle back and forth from different like human player zones to shoot our balls into the goal. And alternatively, the main thing our turret has actually proved more helpful for is defense, in which like, whenever we get shoved, we can still shoot balls into the goal effectively, even experiencing pretty harsh defense, which helped us score a lot more balls during teleop.
I guess what I wanted to go where that question is for a rookie debating if they should build a turret or not, and if they've never built a turret, do you think that they should or?
I would honestly say that currently evaluate your current robot, and that if you're reaching like the limit in which you probably like need a turret, or there's like little to no other improvements you can make, then yeah, I would go for it. Just make sure you have like a relatively good designer to ensure that your turret is consistent and all, because having a bad turret could really mess up your robot. So ensure that if you're gonna implement a turret, that you have a well thought out plan on how you can implement it, and like zero it and keep track of the position and all.
Do you have any advice on how to make it as consistent as possible? And like, did you have any hardships you faced that people could learn from?
Yeah, one thing we faced earlier on for earlier iterations of our turret was that we used the motor encoder to keep track of our turret's position, but we realized that that drifted significantly over the course of a match. So since then, we've added an external encoder with a higher CPR to ensure that the drifting wasn't as severe, and just in case if anything were to skip, the external encoder wouldn't or keep track of that and still keep track of the actual turret's position, not the motors.
Mm-hmm. Which encoder did you use? Was it just a normal Rev encoder or?
We use a ELC encoder, a East Loops component
Yeah,
encoder, which tracks around 1024 CPR throughout the rotation.
that's good. And did you have any hardships with the stability of your turret? I know some teams have had like trouble making the turret stable enough where they can run it effectively.
Yeah. For our turret, we like starting off the get go made sure it's made of very durable materials and that had a very like rigid design to ensure that we don't have any stability issues. So just making sure that you have a lot of plates supporting it and a lot of like support beams around it could help make sure your turret is more rigid and won't deal with any issues. Like we have a various amount of standoffs throughout our turret to ensure that it doesn't bend or skip in any way.
Mm-hmm. And are you guys using a bearing stack or a lazy Susan?
Oh yeah, we're using a lazy Susan we bought off Amazon
Okay.
pretty cheaply.
And do you have any experience with a bearing stack, or did you just from the get go want to do a lazy Susan?
At first we were thinking of doing a bearing stack, but realized that there may be some hardships along the way of making sure it's consistent and all. So we just decided to go easy, go for Lazy Susan. Although it makes our turret a little bit more thick, with our kicker design, it doesn't really matter because our kicker could very easily reach the top of the shooter without any issue.
Mm-hmm. And did you have any for rookies? Would you have them do a lazy Susan or a bearing stack?
I would personally say a Lazy Susan is definitely the easier approach compared to making a bearing stack because you have to make sure your tolerances are all good for your bearing stack compared to just making sure you have the right mountings for a Lazy Susan. And secondly, make sure the Lazy Susan you have has the CAD or specifications on their product listing. Otherwise, making sure your robot fits the turret is going to be pretty difficult by using IRL measurements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess just making sure it's as accurate as possible in the CAD versus in real life. And for your lazy Susan, you just bought it off Amazon and it had all the CAD and everything there, or
We had drawings on the product listing as well as some specifications, so we used those to recreate it within CAD.
mm-hmm.
Those helped us out a whole lot because some other lazy students we found online were pretty good as well, but they didn't have any listings for their size or how far their spacings were, so we couldn't really replicate it that well in CAD compared
Mm-hmm.
to the one we bought.
And did you have to do any adjustments to the lazy Susan itself, or was it just good from the get go?
Oh yeah, for the Lazy Susan, from the get go, it was pretty good. We did have to tap in some M5 holes to actually mount it to our robot, but other than that, it's held up pretty well so far. We do have to clean it occasionally because it does tend to get like some grime stuck on the inside. So like making sure you use some like alcohol or whatever to make sure it stays clean is very useful in maintaining low friction.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The Zoom meeting's about to end in 1 minute. So, do you have any closing remarks for any rookies trying to just make their robot better, make their CISA go better, and just try to make their score as high as possible?
Yes, considering this is the middle of the season, about I'd make sure you keep track of whatever your robot's difficulties are and improve upon those heading into like more serious competitions such as qualifiers and regional championships to ensure that you will do your best at those events.
Yeah, totally agree. Nehal, do you have any last minute questions or?
No.
All right, and then I don't see anything in the chat, so thank you, Quack, for joining us. And I think that will be the end of the stream.